All right, here we are, folks. Another week of the AVB Podcast. Do us a favor and make sure you say hello to our awesome sponsors. We couldn't do this if it wasn't for them. Got links down below for them, this week's guest, and of course ourselves. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and click that bell if you want to get notifications for when we got new videos. Here we go to this week's interview, Mr. Eamon McGrath. We are hanging out this time at Empire Recording Studio with Mr. Eamon McGrath. What's going on, brother?
How's it going, man?
Good, man. I was first introduced to you through the wonderful and fantastic Sheila Roberts.
Hell of a lady.
Absolutely. Sheila has a birthday party every year and asked me to play, and I was in a spot where I got to play a little guitar and sing before you guys got on.
Good night.
And man, I was blown away.
Thanks. Awesome. I liked it.
Yeah, it was fun.
That was a really standout show for us this year.
It was fun, right?
Yeah.
You're playing in a backyard. It's an unusual spot.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, it was not, no corners were cut. You know, it sounded awesome. It was like all the gear we needed. You know, like was there, provided for us to make it sound great. It looked awesome. You know, people were up on the ladder in the tree hanging lights.
Yeah,
it's the real deal.
Yeah, she has a blast.
She totally dials it in.
How long have you known Sheila?
Not long, actually. Like earlier this year, I was introduced to her through a mutual friend, Danny Miles, who plays drums in July Talk, and he was playing drums for me in March. We just did like a 401 run from Windsor, Ottawa, to preview a lot of the material that ended up being released on the record, Town Tomorrow. So we were kind of breaking in a lot of the songs live, and he convinced her to come to a show at the Fog, and we hit it off.
Nice,
it's awesome. Yeah.
She's awesome. Let me get a little bit, because I don't know anything about you, to be honest with you, other than like I was just blown away by hearing you play. So let's go right back. Where were you? Where did it all start for you? Where were you born and raised? All that stuff?
Edmonton.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was born in Edmonton and moved to Toronto in 2010. But Edmonton's where I kind of cut my teeth.
So talk to me about the house you grew up in.
Just like a middle class North Edmonton house. My mom was a writer. My dad works for Grand McEwen University.
Your mom's a writer? What does she write?
Poet and a novelist.
Okay.
So
you grew up around that?
Yeah, I grew up in a super musical household, really artistic household. So there's always music playing.
Everyone's a musician,
loud
or they listen to it?
Like my parents weren't musicians, but my brother and I both are, so they sort of fostered that in us. And then from a really young age, I just started touring. And
how young?
I was about 17 when I started.
Really?
Started hitting the road.
Like all on your own, just kind of.
I was playing. I was playing guitar, kind of sometimes, in and out of this band called the City Streets for a while, and I opened for them on a lot of tours across the states, across Canada. In 2009, I did my first tour of Europe, and then that became a pretty regular thing. But that was mostly like a lot of acoustic folk stuff. But
let me pull you back for a second. Talk to me about, because I want to know more about your house growing up, because clearly art was important in that.
Yeah, it's super important.
Talk to me about that experience. When was the first time you knew that art was a thing?
Actually, it's cool. It's a very vivid memory. I was my mom was taking night classes at the University of Alberta, and she was in an art history course, and I remember being like, this is one of my earliest memories, but yeah, I was looking through a textbook.
Yeah?
An art history textbook.
And what was in there? What was it that caught your eye?
I mean, it would have been like, probably the Picasso, one of those Picasso paintings of there's like three, I want to say, no, it's like five, there's 5 escorts, I think. He's got the painting of those working girls, and yeah, I mean, it's a phenomenal painting. And then I just remember being really impacted by the importance of documenting like the harshness of reality.
Really?
Yeah.
How old are you at the time?
Honestly, that memory was like, I was probably around 4, I think.
At 4 years old, well, I mean, this has got to be a little bit of applying some stuff later, but like, did you like?
Yeah, really, I mean, sure, hindsight's
sure,
2020.
yeah.
But I mean, at the time, it was like,
it just grabbed you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was always like, my dad was always playing the Clash and the Smiths, and like, I'm officially older now than my parents were when they had me, so
okay.
I can now, it all makes sense when it's like you have a 27-year-old guy who has a kid, and of course you're 27, you love the Clash.
Right.
It makes sense,
Yeah.
Because you're still kind of this like young punk rocker, and all of a sudden you got this life to look after.
Right.
Of course you'd be playing that music, you know. But I mean, it was like a really diverse kind of like a diverse stuff. Like it wasn't like it was typically, you know, my parents never listened to just exclusively punk rock. It was like there was a seamless transition between, you know, the Clash and the Smiths into the Blue Nile or into, you know,
were they record collectors or was it CDs? Yeah. So you remember being around the albums and stuff?
Yeah, everything, like the smell of the records and that old vinyl smell, like when they're kind of like tucked away in the basement on the floor in crates, you know.
It's called mold.
It is.
Yeah.
It's mold, but it's like, but I mean, that's that distinct smell of like old vinyl. It's really, you're right. It's mold, but it's like what a great kind of, you know,
what was it that
feeling? It's so tactile.
So know? Like, are you close with mom and dad?
Yeah, absolutely.
So was music a thing that sort of like, because you said it was always around, but was it like a part of the family?
Yeah, I mean, big time. You know, it was like an omnipresent thing. I mean, even when I was older, like, coming home, you know, when you're like, you know, you're a teenager and you're partying like a fucking idiot or whatever. Like, my parents, it was like in the morning, there's no mercy. Like, cranked. Music would be cranked on set. Like, it was like, I don't care what you did last night. Like, I don't care about the headache you got. It's like, there's music playing. It's Saturday morning. It's 9 a.m. Like, it was, they were unsympathetic in the presence of music in the house.
But there's something else there, too, because I know other people that grow up in houses that are like that, where, you know, at 9 o'clock in the morning, there's no mercy music, too.
Yeah.
But this isn't just, you know, unabashed punk rock, because not every 17-year-old ends up jumping on tour and then running off to Europe.
No, that's true. And I mean, not every 17-year-old that's approaching music the way you would if you were in a punk band is playing all these other different styles of music other than just typical punk rock.
Right.
Which I think my musical upbringing and being exposed to so many different kinds of things as if they were the same thing really impacted that.
Did you have, outside of the music that your parents were bringing to the house, did you have other teachers? Did you like? I
mean, I took guitar lessons when I was younger. But I mean, a lot of and super influential guy, really great player. But the guitar teachers are typically, you know, like they like classic rock, and so, which is good because there is like a, you know, kind of rudimentary way of learning the basics of guitar, and it's, you know, players like Jimmy Page. It's like that's kind of the textbook thing, you know.
Right.
So it's good to know that stuff, and like blues scales and all that ends up informing your playing. But then, you know, after you've sort of outgrown lessons, start playing in a band, that's when you really start learning about what makes guitar playing, you know, unique and original, and what makes players like Greg Ginn or Greg Sage, like from Black Flag and the Wipers, what makes those guys stand out as being, you know, unique players and having their own sound. What makes Neil Young such an interesting, unique
What's your learning process through that? Is it just simply playing it, listening to it?
I mean, like listening, obviously, like listening first, and then hearing something that kind of stands out to you, like Greg Sage, for example, to the fact that it's like everything's like a downstroke, and there's like that rigid, like that punk rock kind of like almost like statuesque feeling where it's like you couldn't possibly be playing any faster, so you're almost like you firm up, you know. Like the Ramones are like that too. It's like you know, Husker Du, like really early Husker Du, where it's like you're almost at a standstill because you're moving so quickly. You know,
when you're listening to music, when you're kind of going through new stuff and you're kind of listening through, what's important to you? What are you looking for?
Oh man, it's like if you've been playing music and touring and recording and writing for long enough, like you stop, like something in your mind switches almost to the point where you're kind of just like studying it. Once you've devoted your life to the creation of music, you don't just like listen to music for fun.
Right.
That stops. Because you like anything you hear, you're trying to figure out what it is that they're doing.
Right.
And how they're doing it. it's there are exceptions, obviously. Like there's lots of music that I put on that I put on because it makes you feel good. That's the point,
right?
But I mean, it is difficult to get away from that as an artist. The minute something kind of clicks with you're like, what is it about that music that's doing this to me?
And I guess that's really my question for you, have you sort of identified what it is that connects you with a new piece? Have you thought about it at that process?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that like when it comes to songwriting, there's like this there's kind of this like every great song has like a sun through the clouds moment. There's this kind of like thing, and it's like, and I think that you can sort of like you can pinpoint that to one moment in every great song,
okay.
And then the rest of the song is kind of like framing and establishing a sense of momentum that's either leading up to or getting away from that one moment.
Right, and then playing with where it sits.
Exactly.
And, then,
and so that's the point of like, the length of a verse and a chorus and all that. So you're really just like, as a songwriter, you're just like manipulating the anticipation, for the audience to approach that like cathartic second. And, that was something that I feel like I learned from Paul Westerberg in The Replacements, for example. I think that every Paul Westerberg song has this like one spectacular minutia, like this tiny thing in it that is just almost undetectable, but he's so great at playing with like the tension of approaching and leaving that second. Like Left of the Dial is the perfect example of that. Like there's that moment where there's like the Pete Townsend windmill at the end of the song, and it's like that's like the sun coming through the clouds, and the whole song is leading up to that, like that anticipatory moment.
Right.
Lots of great songwriters do it. Neil Young does it. Husker Du does it. Like Celebrated Summer is a great example. It's like, that like in where there's that kind of acoustic part where the 12-string happens. Like the song just kind of breaks down into that 12-string, and it's like that finger picking kind of thing. It's just like this beautiful thing. Yeah, so all that stuff, like that just comes from like listening to music and trying to figure out what it is and paying attention to your feelings when you're hearing it. And,
right. Because in addition to the music, the lyrics are really important to you too.
Well, I think lyrics, yeah, of course. I mean,
because that's important to point out, because for a lot of people, it's one or the other.
I think the way I see that stuff, because I mean, yeah, I've been asked that before, and it's like the lyrics in a song are the thing that is going to make it like 100% inarguably yours. Like you can only play so many chords.
Right.
Like, but I mean, lyrics are going to be the sort of like the fundamental factor in what truly is inarguably going to make a song your own. But I mean,
I think lyrics cut through the learning curve of music too. You know what I mean? Like so long as the song's got a good sort of like something that people can just kind of sit on top of, and then lyrics they can identify with, I think that sort of tends to drive a bigger crowd along with it. You know what I mean? Like I think that catches them first.
And I mean, yeah, for sure. But there's just like this heartbeat in a song that's so essential, Yeah. That I think like that's what people really connect to, is like,
fair enough. They connect to the rhythm before they connect to anything.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like Dylan, for example, like a lyric, like the ultimate example of a rock, lyricist, but he's got songs on the Basement Tapes that are just like incoherent mumbling, intentionally,
Right.
And there's still these incredible songs, like Santa Fe is a great example. Like, what a song, but it's like he's literally just mumbling, like he hasn't written the song yet, and that's what makes it such a good song. So there's that paradox.
Well, and then you got, and I mean, it's well, I mean, maybe not so far jump, but like you've got guys like Vedder who play with that idea with incredible lyrics. Like Yellow Ledbetter, like that song's an entire poem, and the cut that they used is him mumbling through because he didn't even know the lyrics.
Or that's why you can be so attached to music in languages you don't understand.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like
do you listen to world music like when you're
yeah, absolutely.
What
I mean, like Fela Kuti is the.
I'm not even gonna lie. You've already mentioned like say I'm not a guy that goes. You keep throwing him out because like we'll try to like chase him so that we can find links and stuff. But
he's worth hearing.
Tell me about Fela Kuti.
The Fela is like the ultimate, like the end of punk rock. Like that's where punk rock ends. You can't comprehend punk rock beyond him. Like it's like the guy lived in a fucking commune. You know, he had like 27 wives allegedly just so that they would have legal rights and representation in Nigeria. I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, he could have just been chauvinistic, which is awful. But I mean, according to him, it was like marriage was a way for women to have like legal status at the time. So this ultra oppressive government. And he had this commune that he declared this like autonomous republic where there was a recording studio, like he grew weed there, you know.
This is where?
In Nigeria.
Holy
he died in
shit.
1994 of AIDS, and 1 million people attended his funeral. You know, he was such a powerful figure in Nigerian music and in the development of Afrobeat. And I mean, he would like I believe the government of Nigeria murdered his mother by throwing her out of a 7-story window to try and intimidate him to stop playing music, and he just refused to do it.
Holy shit!
Heavy duty, fucking badass. Wow. And he would do things like, you know, songs would be an hour long. The band would be like an 18-piece band. He would perform a song live until he recorded it, and then he would consider it dead. He would never play it live again.
Really?
Like, really crazy shit. And so, yeah, I mean, that's like, you know, like, Fela Kuti's like, you look up to bands or whatever, like in North America, and it's like, those musicians just like piss all over those people. Like, you know, like you watch like musicians like in the Africa 70 in his band. And it's just like, and then you try to go back to like the Pixies, and you're like, what the fuck is the Pixies? Like, it's like amateur hour. Like, these people can barely hold an instrument, and Fela Kuti's 18-piece band is like locked into a groove that's so thick, like the human mind can't even put numbers to it, you know?
That's incredible.
So yeah, there's lots to be. I mean, North American music is like one tiny little fraction of all of it.
Why do you think? Because I mean, you hate to say it, but I mean, if you're looking around, if you're paying attention at all, it just starts to become obvious at some point. Why do you think the art form of songwriting and musicianship seems to be taking such a waning position in North America? Because it's not worldwide. People love music around the world, and there's still pockets of North America that love music, but it's like whatever. It's
like songwriting has become kind of obsolete.
Yeah,
I don't know.
In a world that's moving towards like we need more artists, it values art and artists so much less. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like music's become so commodified that it's hard to. It's become really hard to identify it when it is really great. Mm-hmm. Like, it's so easy now to fake it, and it's so easy to like, you know, it's so easy to make a record and make someone who cannot sing and play a note sound like they can sing and play a note. You know? Right. And I'm not putting anyone down, but it's like, you know, there are bands that like that had never played a show that spend all this money recording, you know, and like go in syllable by syllable and comp, you know, everything, and it removes the authenticity in recorded music, and it removes the honesty and also like the urgency to actually get any good, you know. Right. Like so, you know, Steve Albini, for example, is a great. He's just, his opinion is just like, recording should be like, you find a good band, you point a mic at them. You know, that's the best approach, I think.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I make records alone, and I multi-track. You know, a lot of my albums. I have done live off the floor recording, but it's like, but when I go into a studio,
you layer all your own instruments. Yeah. You write all.
But
the pieces.
I mean, but it's still like, it's just me. It's my name, and it's my song and my idea. So it's like, that's because I feel like it's like when I'm in the studio, I am being recorded that in the same kind of authentic way, you know. But Yeah, I mean, I've made records where it's like, okay, it's, we got to do 3 days of bass. And it's like, I just think it takes a lot of the energy out of the process.
Right.
And it's like, and then it's like, if you're that clinical and unexciting in your approach and artistic process, it's like, what do you think the microphones are going to pick up? Like, they don't lie. Microphones are objective things. They're, they're going to call it like they see it. And if you have a really bored band in the studio, then you're going to make a boring record.
Right.
And so I think people are really conditioned to hearing music that's got the soul sucked out of it.
Right.
So people just kind of assume that that's just what music is, because that is what it's become. Whereas it's like music at its heart is the ultimate form of resistance and of passion and energy and the human spirit, which is what someone like Fela Kuti proves. Because
let's go back here for a second. You're 17 years old. You start touring for the first time.
Yeah.
Talk to me. How does that decision even get made for you?
The band I was kind of playing with offered to bring me along.
Were these all older guys? Or?
Yeah, they were at the time. Yeah, they were like, it was they in hindsight they were young, but to me they seemed like these old music veterans, and they were touring Canada all the time. Like, I remember, I saw some of their tour dates, and I remember seeing that they were playing at South by Southwest, and I thought that was this huge deal.
Right.
So I was really awestruck by them. Like they really were doing it. They were in the van, playing 150 shows a year, booking their own tours.
And mom and dad are just like, nah, fuck it, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, it was never like a point of discussion. Like, it was like, it's just what I was doing.
Really?
Yeah, and that's kind of just always been the way I approach it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just like, it's got to happen. I just think that, like, and this kind of goes along with my, I guess, philosophy with music in general, but it's like, it's kind of something that just happens to you, and that's the way you have to treat it. Like, you have to think of yourself as kind of like almost like a conduit for something that's greater than you, and if you open yourself up to that possibility, really good opportunities happen. Like, I have a theory that good bands don't play bad shows, because I think that there's like a connection to music that really great people have together, where if there's honesty and integrity and energy, it's going to be great.
One of my favorite things in the world, and I've only started appreciating this since I've started performing, but now as an audience member, when I watch a band in trouble, watching them power through that
totally
is my favorite thing in the world.
Yeah.
And if you understand that, if you understand what's happening there and you see what's happening
the
there,
technical dynamics of like blowing a patch cable or something.
Yeah.
And overcoming it.
Or watching a guy change a string in the middle of a song and hitting the,
Absolutely. Or whatever. I mean, like, when you've been on tour for 3 weeks and you played 23 shows in 21 days, and your voice is shot, and somehow adrenaline and sleep deprivation like cause you to perform somehow,
right?
And you just ride that high, and I've seen the body do remarkable things on stage that you can't even believe that the person's doing it. Like a complete transformation.
Yeah.
Like the most hungover, crippled, drug-addicted person can get on stage and be completely...
And just kind of turn it
transformed.
On. Yeah.
Chai Pig from SNFU is a great example. I still think, to this day, I am blown away by the two sides of the coin of that person. Like, that's a human being that is, like, literally in the abyss. And you put that guy on a stage and give him a microphone, and it's like... He's like pure charisma, and that's my point with like, he is a conduit to something, and I'm not I'm not a fucking hippy dippy astrology guy or whatever, but there's something at work in the universe when you watch a really great band play a show.
It's funny because it's something obviously I've spent some time thinking about recently more than ever, but it's amazing to me how, because I don't buy into that shit either. I'm not, you give me The Secret, whatever, right? But when you do sort of like move into this kind of field, it's amazing how often things pop up to you that you go, oh, well, if I wasn't specifically just kind of open to whatever, that never would occurred to me as a thought.
Exactly.
My favorite new phrase is, oh, well, that shit's starting to happen that makes you believe in shit that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, I've had the craziest, most serendipitous
Talk to me through one of them.
moments on tour, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, years ago, I was in a band, we hit a deer, the van was totaled, not far from here, actually, like at the Sarnia crossing, and, somehow we made it to Toronto, replaced the van, finished the tour, and this was all within, like, 2 days off we had.
Right.
Like, shit like that. Or, like, how... Like, I've been places in Europe and Mexico that I never would have imagined myself ever going, that I never would have been to if I hadn't been playing music, Like a guitar brought me to those places.
Right.
That you'd never go to,
Talk to me about that first trip to Europe. How did that come about?
It was great. I mean, it was just...
How old were you?
I was 19. I would have been 19, I think.
All right.
20, maybe. Yeah, I mean, it was just... I was on White Whale Records at the time, and a lot of artists that were on the label were starting to go over there regularly. There was an international distribution deal with Cargo Records, which was in the 2000s. That was a big deal. And I got contacts from some of the other people on the label, and it was this really like simple, really easy transition into like touring regularly in Europe. And I mean, honestly, like at the time, it seemed really, really daunting, but it's way more daunting to go on a 22-date U.S. tour. It's way more involved.
Why is that?
It's just like the infrastructure for art in North America is just so toxic, because I think that in the commercial way of thinking about it, like in the act of touring, that hasn't existed in North America, before the arrival of industrial capitalism, essentially. Whereas in Europe, there were literally traveling minstrels, that rode around,
right,
playing songs for survival,
right.
And I mean, there's obviously like that existed in I'm sure in some great level with the First Nations people here,
mm-hmm.
but the distances involved,
right,
were just not, they're inconceivable, whereas you could be someone, in Eurasia, in the old world, that could have, gotten from present day Lisbon to present day Moscow in their lifetime on foot.
It's so funny to me that's the way you frame it, because you really do think about it like that, right? Like
100%.
you think of this as like an age-old career.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's as old as humanity,
Yep.
And like, yeah, I think that punk rock, it really falls into a similar kind of lineage, in the sense that, recorded music is sort of like one kind of aristocratic way of conceiving of music through time, and then you have the stuff that's been written by the impoverished lower classes, and a lot of that stuff unfortunately has been forgotten through time, because they've had no means of recording it,
mm-hmm.
And I mean, so the idea of recording that music, which I think you could call punk rock, would be in the time of Beethoven, a mysterious music that we'll never have any idea what that was, because it was being performed in some underground tavern in Vienna,
right,
by a Hungarian band or something, and no one will ever know what it sounded like. Like, to me, that's as punk as it gets,
right?
And so that's the way I kind of.
It's funny that it's funny that you sort of frame it that way, because we do, especially now. And I mean, I don't know if this sort of even answers the question I answered before about why we value it less, but until recently, music was a thing that could only happen
exactly only happen in the moment.
Yeah.
And so now, industrial capitalism, like, let's all sing its praises, like, and to some benefit, like, you have a recording studio in a house,
Right.
You can open the door to someone's house in Windsor, Ontario, and you're in this magical creative world.
Right.
But do not rule out the fact that there are many people playing music in the global south that do not have the ability to afford this.
Right.
And that music may never be documented. And to me, like, that's in the lineage of what I think you could call, the origins of punk rock. Punk rock is like the adversarial reaction to the established popular norm of recorded music, and the conception of what popular norm of recorded music should be. And it just happened to be that in the past 70 years we've gotten technology that we can actually hear it.
Right.
But recorded music before that was literally on paper, and you had to pay to learn how to make that happen.
It's interesting too because, clearly you studied music history.
Unofficially.
Yeah. But it's funny because it doesn't take too long in looking into music history to find out that music was how we told stories first.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what I mean about, like, about touring and the act of touring as a musician. Like, that was just a tradition that people have always been a part of.
I'm so fascinated. I'm trying to, and I don't know if you have a perspective on it or not, but I'm still very fascinated in the idea that you caught onto this so early, and that you were just locked into it. Like, this was what you were doing. Like, that's not a decision a lot of kids are able to find.
I know a lot of people, they get to a certain age and they kind of like decide that they're going to sort of play guitar and join a band, and then that band might get successful or something. Yeah, I see it all the time. But I mean, like, but then there's people that, you can tell were put on this earth to do what they're doing. Like Ian Blurton is like a guy that is just like, he's one with his guitar, like, he's just, you could not imagine him without that aspect of who he is. It's just like, he's always done it, he'll always do it. And you kind of know it when you see it. Those are the musicians I respect the most. Paul Mortimer from the Highest Order is like, he is a guitar player by birth.
Yeah.
You know it when you watch him play it. Yeah, the Sadies. Those guys are like, that's like, they were brought up that way.
How many albums do you have under your belt?
I'll be putting out my 7th next year.
Okay.
So, I mean, officially, but like lots of recording.
Right.
Lots of recording.
Yeah. Is the engineering part of it as important to you as the rest of it?
I think that, like, the act of, like, being in a studio is, you need someone that's really, 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 really open to the craziest idea. And you need someone that's going to move really, really quickly. And so, yeah, engineering is critical, because you can't have someone that doesn't know how to use the stuff.
Right.
But you need to have someone that's like speaking your language and that's anticipating what you want to do.
Mostly I was asking if you, like, if understanding how the engineering side of it works was a thing that was important to you as an artist.
At first, no. I was just like, let me do my thing, But as I've recorded more and more and more, yeah, I'm finding that it's definitely become easier to tell someone else what you're looking for if you know how to use the gear.
Right.
There's still certain things I don't understand, but it's like, yeah, I mean, if you actually take the time to, like, study how to use a compressor, you can have a way more accurate, streamlined, efficient time in the time that you have.
Right.
So, yeah, it's like learning how to play an instrument, but I mean, you can still make a great record and not know how to use it.
I guess my question, where I'm really getting there, is when you're writing your songs, there's tones that you're going for musically. When you're writing your lyrics, there's ideas that you're going for that way. And because you sort of talk about performance and music as an in-person sort of art. Kind of wonder if as you're creating, as you're writing, if you think about how that translates specifically to the recorded medium. You know what I mean? Or do you just think about your song as a performance?
Yeah, I mean, there's like, I think in the initial conception of writing a song, you know, you're not totally sure what the finished product's going to be.
Sure.
Like, I think that, you know, every song should work in its most fundamental form, like, a voice and a guitar.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that when I try to write something that way, that's usually what all I'm trying to do, is make it work,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in the moment or whatever.
Look, we're getting a little like meh, but the reason I'm asking is because I sort of think of, and whether right or wrong, I sort of think of artists as falling into usually one of two categories.
Okay.
They're either an artist who is very, very meticulous, very, very detail oriented, is looking for a very specific thing when they start out and isn't happy until they find that goal.
Yeah, right.
Or
Yeah, that's not me.
Or there's the throw shit at the wall and see what comes
100%.
out. Yeah. You know
That's
what I
my
mean?
approach, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's the way I work too. And it's just, it's funny because it usually works the other way.
Right.
For people who start so early. They usually lock on to like, I found a pattern.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like that was it for you.
I mean, I just find that way of working really boring.
Yeah.
You know? And I always have. Like, I just get really bored. And it's like, it doesn't, you know, doing it the way you're describing, like throwing a bunch of shit at the wall and seeing, like, it sometimes is a colossal failure.
Yeah.
But it's more fun to take the risk and having the guts to fuck something up than it is to, like, spend 2 days EQing a snare drum.
Was that easy for you though? Was dealing with the failure of that process tough?
I mean, yeah, man. I've made some records that I'm not happy with.
Yeah,
for sure. Because it's like they veered too much to that direction of like just kind of being like, let's see what happens.
Okay.
You know, like I made a record called Exile that I think was a disaster, for a lot of different reasons. But I mean, yeah, and then, you know, in the moment, you're just like, you don't care. You're just going to go for it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's such a great feeling in that, you know, but it takes a toll later.
The one that you like the least, how far away from that are you?
I put it out in 2014.
Okay.
So a few years ago.
All right. So,
but it was a long period of like really coming to grips with the fact that I released something that I think now is kind of a piece of shit.
But that's my question. Have you been able to turn it back around where you can go back and listen to it?
I don't listen to it.
No?
No, I pretend that it doesn't exist.
Really?
But I mean, it took me a long time to get out of like the hole of like feeling like, you know, when you're only as good as the last thing you did or whatever.
Right.
You're only as good as the last show you play or blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like until you make a record that is going to kind of get you back to that place that you wish you know, the artistic kind of place that you wish you were in.
Right. Are you the artsy moody guy?
I don't know. I don't think so. I hope not.
Like, can you be?
Yeah, I mean, everyone can be a little depressed.
But that's not you. You're not like the brooding artist guy.
I hope not. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I think like that in general, like artists must be the worst people to like be in a relationship with or something, you know?
Fucking preach, brother. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that it might happen kind of by default. I think that like, especially musicians, there's like this like, sometimes you can just suck the fucking the soul out of a room, you know, which is, you know, and then also, you know, I think vice versa. But yeah, I totally see.
Do you think about yourself that way though? Like, are you like? I guess that's what I was asking about that brooding artist guy. Like, are you a guy that can go into a room and like just because you're so sort of like absorbed into whatever it is that you're working on, you just kind of forget about everything else?
I think it happens to everybody that's in this line of work,
right?
To some degree, reluctantly, you know. And yeah, I mean, like again, when you're trying to release a record that you're not happy with, or get behind a project that you wish you could have changed, it's like a really hard hard undertaking to try and feign like you believe in something that you don't believe in, you know?
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I bet that for the touring cycle for that record, I mean, I was probably really hard to be around, you know, because it's like, it's a kind of a heartbreaking experience to like put a guitar in your back and go and play songs that you don't feel.
How long into the tour did you get to the point where, how long was it when you realized, oh fuck, I don't think I like any of this?
At the end of 2014, I did like a couple tours. I did like a July Talk tour, and a Chuck Reagan tour, and I was like ready to quit music. Because of the record. Yeah. Like it was like curtains for me. I was just burnt out. I was like really dissatisfied with the record that I'd made. I was like, the label situation was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I felt like totally lost. But you're like handcuffed to it, you know, because you're trying to. I mean, in a lot of ways, you know, like you're depending on it for your living. So, you know, and also like shows get booked, so you got to go play them.
Right.
And I mean, if you put out a record, no matter, you know, how big of a mistake you thought it might have been, you still got copies that you don't want to have sitting around anymore.
Right. Yeah, especially if you hate the fucking album.
So you're in this weird, like almost dysmorphic state of mind where you're trying to go out on tour as much as you can to unload all the stuff you don't want around anymore.
Right.
But you also resent the fact that you have to do it, you know? And it was like, so I guess my point, is to kind of come back to what you were saying, is like having that approach and that quick, kinetic, frantic kind of like, you know, throw everything at the wall, see what sticks approaches can really backfire.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, more often than not, it works out for me, so I don't really, and maybe also a sense of just like total stubbornness, but it's like I don't want to change how I do it, because I think I'd be more unhappy overall if I, you know, like you said, meticulously went into a mix and like obsessed over the snare EQ. Like that's crazy to me.
Yeah, it's the phrase that I heard it the best way I heard it put recently was, you have to learn that finished is better than perfect.
Yeah, 100%. And like and you know, like if you don't just say the record's done, then it's never gonna come out.
It's a hard process, man. You know, it's a hard process for a lot of people.
It's easy to overthink everything, but I think that like you got to go usually with like your first true gut feeling. Yeah, and that's usually the right call.
We've just been talking about, you know, the general umbrella of being a musician. I really would like to hear you did an artist residency.
Yeah,
at
Sappy Fest.
At Sappy Fest. That was last year?
Yeah, and that's where I recorded the Tantrumar album.
Oh, okay.
It just came out.
Okay, was this just this last summer, or was it a year ago?
The residency was last year.
Okay.
So it was like, I was
talk to me about talk to me about the festival itself, because I'm not entirely sure anybody in my audience even knows about it.
Sappy Fest is the best.
I only heard about it recently.
It's like you can imagine, like, it's like indie rock summer camp, you know? Okay. It's like everyone, you know, involved in like on like a DIY independent level and of like putting a Canadian tour together for you is like in one place in a beer garden.
Okay.
It's heaven. Like it's like you catch up with people from Vancouver you haven't seen in 4 years, and people from Halifax that go to Sappy every year, and it's like it's this big like meeting place for all these really creative Canadian artists, and that's the key word in that statement, is that like Sappy Fest is a music festival that's like lanyard free. Like there's no douchebag from a booking agency walking around, you know, trying to scope out the hottest young band. It's like there's no conference aspect to it whatsoever. It's like literally everyone there is in a fucking awesome band, and it's very artist forward. And they have this whole component to the festival essentially you go and you live in Sackville. There's you get some funding from the New Brunswick Arts Council. The festival puts you up, and then you do whatever you want in Sackville for the summer, and then you play at the festival, and that's how you end your tenure. So they set me up in this, like, no word of a lie, in this abandoned bar called George's that had like couple working circuits of electricity. I brought some recording equipment with me, and I made a record in an abandoned bar alone. Yeah, like a condemned building.
No shit.
Yeah. So that's the kind of shit that's like Sackville is like this magical, and Sappy's responsible. It's like this kind of weird magical vortex of like.
Now, is Sappy a person, or is it you're just referring to the?
That's referring to the festival.
Okay, because like I said, I know nothing about the like. I don't know about the history of it. How long has it been going on?
I think it had its 13th year.
Wow.
14th year this year.
How did you find out about it? How did it become a thing on your
Julie
radio?
Doiron, who I play guitar for in the Wrong Guys, she was one of the founders. So Sappy Records was a label from the late '90s that put out a ton of great music, and the label folded, but the festival continued.
Okay.
And since the label folded, it's changed directors 3 or 4 times, but it's like this perseverant spirit.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's like an East Coast institution. So it was a really great opportunity. I would not have been able to make that record if it wasn't for that festival.
That's awesome, man. That's great. No, I happened to find it as I was looking through a list of festivals and got looking into it a little bit, and then it was right around that same time that I ran into you and you had brought up that you had been in there. I thought it was incredible because everything that I see about it says, but basically what you were saying,
it's worth going to.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I tell you, it's just hanging out, listening to you play. Again,
thanks for having me here.
Man,
it was an awesome way to spend an afternoon.
Yeah, man, it was a pleasure.
Great setup here.
This is going to come out probably 3 weeks from where we're sitting here. Where should people find you? What do you got coming up? Or how do we find out more from you?
Lots of Canadian shows coming up. I'm going to be out in the West Coast and the Prairies come November, late October, supporting the Dirty Nil. Halifax Pop Explosion's coming up. I'll be playing that. Doing some Quebec dates in November with Area and Zeta. And then there's a short tour of Ontario's microbreweries that I'm going to do with Will Whitwam from the Wilderness, Manitoba.
Oh, nice.
And Julie Doiron's going to headline a couple of those shows too. So the rest of the year is pretty stacked. It's a lot of touring coming up.
That's great. Well, check them out.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on the show.
Dude, I'm such a fan.
Right on. Well, thanks very much for everything.
Thanks. Pleasure.
What a day.
Thanks. Yeah. All right. See you next time. All right, folks, that'll do it for this episode of the AVB Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to go down and click on the subscribe button to make sure that you can continue seeing our episodes as we put them out. We do a lot of videos, and there's a couple of them here that we hope you'll enjoy. There's one up there that we think you might like. And, of course, there's one of our playlists down there for you. Make sure you say hello to some of our sponsors in the links down below while you're there. And, of course, you can find links there to today's guest and all of our other social media. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you next time.